Wagwan, my loves, it's Knowledge Butterfly. As always, sending you guys all peace, blessings, love, and abundance. I'm a little bit high, a little bit tipsy. Today, I've partaken in a little cocktail of vodka and Coke, Coca-Cola, and a little bit of weed, alright, courtesy of my beautiful nephew. So, let's go ahead and get this party started. This video is about it's powerful, y'all. It's about the ego. I'm a researcher. I I like to research and discover other people's perspectives because part of me always understood that we all were one or that we're all connected. And the more and more you listen to other people's perspectives, the more and more you're able to understand, this existence more, but also yourself more. Because all in all, this is a journey into self. It's a journey into learning who you really are, the real you, not the mask that you created. All right, and the mask represents your ego. Okay, so now I'm going to get into a little bit of the conversation and the epiphany that my nephew brought me to, so let me just send him a whole bunch of love, because he is the reason why I graduated. So let me just explain this. I came back to America back in June 2018, and I didn't want to leave Jamaica. My feelings were hurt. I hated this shit. I was like, oh, I do not ever want to come back to this country, right? Um, and so I was going from Airbnb to Airbnb to Airbnb, and I was avoiding coming back home. I allowed my money to be depleted because I didn't want to come back to my father's house. Before the Air, once after the Airbnb situation pretty much was coming to a close, I then started house sitting for this woman who had two cats, and that allowed me to connect with my divine feminine energy on a whole nother level, because cats are very, very feminine. I'm not gonna lie, both of them were boy cats, but it didn't matter. It's very, very feminine energy. Okay. um, and that's a big deal coming from somebody who grew up around dogs, or grew up around the mindset that dogs were better than cats and cats were gross and spooky and all this shit, right? Which I'm not gonna say every black family, but a lot of black families choose dogs over cats, okay? And that right there is showing you the imbalance in our motherfucking mind. We were totally disconnected from our divine feminine energy as a community. So, I had that situation, and I grew and I leveled up, and then it, even though at the time it felt like I was going backwards, I came back to my father's house, right? And I was actually leveling up. I was being forced to deal with my root chakra issues, familial issues, daddy issues, mommy issues, and able to create a new foundation, a new me. You know what I'm saying? And about so that was in the fall. By the spring, new beginnings, I started babysitting my little niece, and she was a baby. She was only like 5 months, 5 or 6 months old when I started. I think it was about 5 months, and started watching her. So this was a different level. All right, so I went from the cat sitting, that's one level, to getting back to my daddy's house, another level, to dealing with my niece who's only like 4 or 5 months old, and that's a third level, right? So three levels. And I'm babysitting her and taking care of her until she's 19 months. And going in right before her 20th month, no, at her 20th month of being with me, um, she wound up um, having to be, I shouldn't have having to be, but she wound up being home care with her father. I'm trying to think of a good way to say it, because people be saying like, um, they call them baby daddies and things like that, but with her father, home care. So Now she's there, and at that same time, right before she transitioned over to be at home with her father, she was here. He's saying she was here with me and my nephew, and this she was there during a transition, so she was passing the guard over to my nephew. Is how I see it now, you know. So my nephew is 22 years old. My niece 19 months, going on 20 months. So I went from like the 19, 20, the 20 month, because the last day she was with me is when she hit her 20 months with me. You know what I'm saying? So I went from 20 to 22. So I graduated up 2 levels, and I had already graduated spiritually, but this was a physical representation of that graduation, right? So in having the conversation with my nephew, it actually brought me to that realization, because a lot of times we look at change and doors closed as a negative thing. We think, okay, this ended. What am I going to do now? We get scared. And I'm going to explain what that fear actually is coming. It's completely your ego. It ain't even the real you. The real you don't fear shit. It's all love. So the ego is the exact opposite. It's the opposite side of what you truly are, right? It's a duality. It's like the light and the shadow. So, having a conversation with my nephew, we had a really deep conversation, and I was totally in spirit when I was talking to him. There was no ego. I wasn't even thinking about what I was saying. It just flowed. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I was telling him without telling his situation, because that's his story to tell. I was explaining to him the journey of the ego. So the path of the ego, you're born into this life. You come out of your mother. Your mother and your father, if you have your father in your life, or if it's your grandmother that raised you, whoever raised you, that's your mother. That is your God. You cry when they leave you. You cry for them to feed you. You cry for them to change you. You're totally dependent upon them. Then you deal with a totally different situation, meaning you're dealing totally with school and all these different personalities, which is the other children who grew up around different gods. They're different, people that raised them. And they had their own thought pattern and thought belief, their own, perspective on life, which was based upon their upbringing. Then if you go from like how in Georgia, we went from elementary school to middle school. So once you go to middle school, now you're dealing with trying to redefine yourself, because in elementary school you're trying to figure out where you fit in middle school you're trying to redefine it. So if you didn't like where you were fitting in, you try to change it, and then you do the same thing when you go to high school. If you choose to go to college, you do the same thing. If you don't go to college and you get into the workforce, you do the same thing. So it's literally showing you like you're always in school. School never ends. School is a never-ending entity, and you're constantly starting over. You're constantly going through new cycles, and that is the 12 zodiacs. That is that circle, all right? And what I came to learn when I was talking to him about that story is, through that whole process of going from your parents to the elementary to middle to high school to college or to work or both, you're creating mask, and the mask represents the ego. And so everybody has a different perspective of who they think you are based upon the mask. When I used to work at the bank, I was the bank Tiffany. When I was at home with my family, I was the family Tiffany. When I was out with my friends, I was the friend Tiffany. And what I've learned from stepping outside of my ego and being the center point and looking at all these different personalities that I created is that none of those are me. There's only one me. There's an authentic me. There's that real me. And that's the only one that exists. And when I say the only one that exists, let's talk about the ego more. When you are born with an ego. When you die, the ego dies as well. And I was telling my nephew that when we're born into these families, and religion teaches us, if we grew up in any type of religion, that you don't know where you came from. You don't really know. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it feels like. You can't describe it. And when you die, you don't know where you're going. So that tells me that the ego only exists here. Brother Panic said that all the time, but it really hit me today. You don't know where you came from, and you don't know where you're going when you leave. That's because the ego can only exist here. The ego only knows its existence because it only exists here. Therefore, it can only explain to you the world based upon the five senses, because the ego is the five senses. Therefore, the ego is the physical body. Therefore, when the physical body dies, the ego dies. When the physical body is born, the ego is born. That is a cycle of death and rebirth. So when you start to understand that, when you are so caught up in your five senses, which is what you can see with your two eyes, what you can hear with your two ears, what you can smell with your two nostrils, what you can taste with your two lips, what you can touch with your two hands, and I think that was all of the senses, but I could have missed one, and it's okay. You get the point. That means that you're dealing with the ego. So you haven't even tapped into your true self, which is your spiritual senses that vibrate and that exist on a higher plane. When you understand that you are a multi-dimensional being, when you understand that you cannot be put into a box, which is what the ego represents, it came out of a box, which is your mama's vagina, to live in a box, which is the earth, the matrix. You know what I'm saying? When you start to understand that, then you understand what your ego truly is. And you get to the point where you don't care what anybody else thinks about you, because those niggas are still caught up in the ego. That's the ego. So that means that you haven't conquered your 12 zodiac signs because you're caring about what all these other egos are thinking about you. Oh my goodness, let them not like me. What am I gonna do? Okay? And that really was sarcastic because she don't give a fuck no more, okay? And so you realize that all these niggas is running around this hamster wheel, putting on all these different masks that represent the zodiac signs, because you're not really one of them, you're all of them. And when you understand that you're all of them and that actually you are above all of them, then fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. Fuck what anybody think about you, because none of that shit matters. They're all thinking that they are their sun signs, that they are that zodiac sign that the sun was in when they were born. When you are every single one of those bitches, but you're actually above those bitches. You actually run those bitches. They are your bitches, okay? So yeah, start to like really question, why these niggas don't know where we going? Why these niggas don't know where we came from? Because it's the ego. Whenever it's questioning, where do we come from? Where do we go when we die? And it has a fear of that shit. That's the ego. Your soul knows where home belongs and where home is. So it's no fear. It's nothing but love. And when I say love, it's a knowing. It's an understanding. It's a true understanding. It's like when black people do that. It's an understanding, that nod. I was living in Jamaica and they still had that same type of respect, that nigga, I see you type of shit. It's that avatar. I see you. I see your soul. I see that you are who you truly are. I see your light. We got to get to that point. And until we who call ourselves conscious get to that point, we're going to still literally be playing out ego roles, these archetypes. That we instead of you being the middle part of the stage like these celebrities, and that's why you're so enamored with them, because they standing in the middle of the stage, but only physically. They not spiritually there. Physically, they standing in that middle point. You have to become that middle point and stop being on the outside looking at these niggas. Because if you look at your natal chart, it's set up like a stage. It's a stage, niggas. Are you going to be in the audience, or are you going to be the center of that stage and be the performer? That's what you're supposed to be doing. Be the performer. Don't give a shit what nobody else think about you. Those niggas are just as insecure as you are. But some of them are better with covering it up. They mask is better than yours. It's scarier than yours. You got that cutesy little mask. where you got the makeup and you trying to, put on a show. They got that scary devil ass mask, where they're saying like, you know what I'm saying, they Jason in this bitch, they Freddy Krueger, and your ass is over here trying to, you being the blonde with the blue eyes, or you being a nigga that get killed in the very first minutes of the movie. You know what I'm saying? So let's get to the point where we realize that the ego cannot exist outside of here. That's why it does not know what comes before this and what comes after this. Be the true you. Be the center. Be the one who knows that you will exist. You existed before this and you will exist after this. So go ahead and do as thou wilt. Do as thou wilt. And live your life like, and I'm not saying go out there and like be killing motherfuckers because you realize that this is just a body